talking about the Rapido Trains D10 Locomotive. Who doesn't love some Canadian Pacific steam? So there we go.
I'm eager to find out about these. I mean, as you said before we got started here, Drew, on our last couple Rapido shows, I've talked about the RDCs and the E8s, but you're the Steam guy, so
Uh-huh. I would.
I'm I'm ready to be awed here. Let's find out because I don't think I've even included this in our news coverage yet. Because again, I'd scratch my head saying I gotta find out some more about that
Mhm.
before I don't know enough about it to talk about it. So
Well,
let's
I was
see.
actually holding out for the Canadian national version, but after talking to Jason back in December, it seems like there's so few pre-orders for it, it's just not going to happen.
Hmm.
But
Is this their second? They did what, the Royal Hudson? Is this the second Rapido steam locomotive?
well, it's the second Rapido US steam locomotive because in the
Oh,
UK they've been pretty active with it, so I'm think their factory is pretty used to it by now.
well, and I'm eager to find out about this. You told me that you bought one of those, and we have never had a review of that. I don't think I've ever seen one like on YouTube. I've never seen any of the magazines cover them. I know Rapido does
Hmm.
UK stuff because didn't they also maybe do a bus or something non-railroad
Yeah.
model? Yeah.
Hmm.
And I don't know anything about that. So yeah, when you get that locomotive, I can't wait to see it. I hope you do a short review for us from all
Absolutely, I'd
over
love to.
this. Because again, there's always people with an interest in some of the European and other
Hmm.
prototypes, or it's just fun. You read them like, oh, I didn't know that, or that's
Hmm.
cool.
And value added tax, I've got to say, for all the people in the UK, that has got to be the best thing ever.
Oh, yeah,
Because the list price
yeah.
took money off of that, and then by the time shipping and everything, the final total was less than the list price of the model. So I mean, it's not a
Oh,
bad deal.
no, I can't remember if I've ever bought. I've gotten stuff from like Japan, and I've
Hmm.
imported some trains from like Brazil. There's a company down there that's made some Alcos, but I don't know if I've ever gotten anything from the UK. So
You've
that
got
I
to try it. That
and
value
that
added tax.
and that you need to put into that review too to explain, because again, it's like, well, this is neat, but how do I get
Uh-huh.
one of these? So tell me how you did it. So yeah, that'd be fun.
Cool.
I can't
Yeah.
can't wait to see it. Well, anyway,
Cool.
let's get on
Yeah,
to
we gotta
the
talk
D10.
about the D10 before our time runs out here. Canadian Pacific was big on 10 wheelers and they were big on 8 wheelers.
Hmm.
And in my area, we have a whole bunch of the Canadian Pacific 8 wheelers. But there's a D10 up in Stroudsburg, which I've always seen. It's kind of in a decaying state right now, but it's cool to see one of these maybe intact in my hand soon, you know?
Oh wow! So there are some around out east there in the U.S. where you are.
Yeah, you'd be
Are they?
surprised how far they migrated down with all the preservation.
And so you say the 10 wheeler, and that's what it's a 460. I would want to call it a mogul, I think, but or is
It
that a
does look like a mogul, doesn't it?
yeah, it does a little bit. I like the cab, how it's got the rounded top and then kind of that edge that comes down between the tender.
Hmm. And one thing I noticed the first time I look at this is just the driving wheels comparative to the boiler. It's just so small.
Hmm.
So they were built for to be a mixed freight engine, but just because they had no trailing wheels, they got really rough when they got above like 50 miles an hour or so, and they didn't really run on the main line too much. So they were just kind of kept to short line freight and maybe some passenger, but mostly just freight. But towards the end of their life, I believe, is when they kind of migrated more into passenger as things were phased out.
I'm
Cool.
seeing here on, I love Rapido's masterclass pages. I wished every
They're so
manufacturer
helpful.
did this because
Hmm.
it's so great. Because when you get excited about a model, that's
No
one of the
idea
first
about it.
things. Yeah, you're reaching for books, magazines, websites. Like, I want to learn more. And Rapido, it's great they give you all that. But I'm seeing here what
Hmm.
more than 500 were built by 5 different builders. Wow.
Yeah.
And they are
So,
pretty old. Yeah, 1905 to 1913.
well, and they lived a long life too. They lived all the way up until the early 1960s, which isn't pretty far behind the J class. So they lived pretty late.
Yeah, I see this one is what in Ontario it says August of 54. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so classes were kind of weird with this one, and I'm not sure exactly what all of them mean. But they progress from A, B, C, D, E, F, G down to J, K, down to K. and J was the passenger version that Rapido's producing. And in a lot of the photos I found, the caption said that they were J class. So I'm thinking that was the version that survived on to being primarily passenger.
Hmm.
So they were built to replace the D9s, with the addition of superheaters, and there wasn't much looking at photos between them that I could find that were different. It was more stuff on the inside. But whoever was the transportation guy for CP at the time, he was a big fan of superheaters, so he was looking to push all their equipment into what would have been their modern era.
Huh. Is a superheater, I think, is that the thing back on the boiler towards the cab? They make that larger.
So a
So in
super
effect, what is that? Tell me what superheater means.
So a superheater, I'm sure somebody watching this is going to have a comment to say about how I'm sort of off. But what it is it takes steam from the boiler, and instead of going straight into the pistons when it's still kind of condensed, it runs it through the heat one more time somehow before it goes to the piston, so it's rushing down there really spread out, all the steam particles, I guess, because it's so hot. And when they get into the boiler, it just makes it more efficient because you need less steam to make more of a push on the
Oh, okay.
wheels.
Wow. All right. I didn't know that.
Cool. I keep forgetting that you're not a steam guy.
I'm not a big steam guy. I mean, yeah, I
Ah.
could do some of the wheel arrangement things. I know a few things, but yeah, I can look at diesels and tell you right and left, but steam and even to an extent some passenger cars, I'm not what I should be. I need to spend more time. I get interested in it. I told you I
Mhm.
bought that little narrow gauge Denver South Park and Pacific during the
Mhm.
Amherst show, but yeah, steam always intrigues me, but I need to do more study.
Uh, cool. So we're just going to move down to, I'm not sure about the design features. I read this paragraph and I was looking at it. And it's kind of all these very specific things with like the superheaters and the interior stuff. Like there's not a lot of recognizable outside changes.
And I assume they were always, you say they lasted a long time, but it looks like they stayed cold. None were converted to oil.
Well, they
Or,
were,
or
that's
were
the other thing that I kind of found a bit blurry. But on the ones I have it, so there was a CP subsidiary called the Esquimalt and Nanaimo.
hmm.
Nanaimo. I don't really know. But they were, so since they were a subsidiary, they were just kind of designated to that route. And they had 16 D10s from CP on their line, and they were all oil fired. So I'm not really sure why the conversion was made, but you can see right there on the tender, they all really soon in their lives had that coal, extended coal bunker.
Hmm.
So they kind of just kept with coal, I guess.
That's neat. It kind of gives it a toyish look because of that
It
kind of
does
that
oversized.
cartoonish that it's here. We had to build it up even more, and then there's a mountain of coal on the top. Well, it's a pretty dinky tender, so I can see why
Mhm.
they needed more capacity. And notice it's got like arch bar leaf spring trucks, and I think that other one, the picture further up, had those cool. I don't know what you call them, but like sleeker. Look at those trucks on the
Yeah,
tender.
I don't know the names of my trucks, but
That's something
I
different I don't
yeah,
recognize. Yeah, but how? Yeah, that's different.
cool. Well, and there's one thing. The other thing I noticed was again how they were built to be mixed freight, but then it kind of didn't really work out. Or mixed, yeah, so passenger and freight, but then it didn't work out. Was you can see that, or what we were talking about, the tender was built short, so I'm thinking it was meant for just those shorter direct passenger routes. But then
Mhm.
the bunker was built just so it could do longer haul freight. I don't know, just an observation.
Yeah.
All right, here. So for each of these, they were kind of like the D10 was a very has a odd history in the way that they were all uh, they were all built by CP, they were all used by CP, and then some of them, but the clear minority were lended or sold to other people. So it's kind of hard it wasn't specific classes. This is what I'm trying to get at. It was more specific numbers. So as we go along, I'll put on the screen when I edit this down the road numbers of the ones that were sent to these little lines and the ones that specifically that Rapido's making,
Mhm.
because it is by number and it's not specifically by class. So it's really hard to memorize and like where these went specifically.
Hmm. And I see that says Dominion Atlantic. I guess that's the, I'd have to look that railroad up. I assume that's what that shield or herald is on the tender, is Dominion Atlantic. I'm not familiar with them. It says 1940. I know
Yeah,
1040 is the number.
So I don't know much about Dominion and Atlantic besides what I've researched about these D10s before we um, made plans to get on here. But so, like I'm saying right here, it's not specific classes. You just see these long
Uh,
numbers, and I wouldn't call them random, but there
right.
was definitely a large gaps between the numbers, so they overlapped in classes a little bit. And so Dominion Atlantic leased 20 D10s from Canadian Pacific because they weren't associated, and a large number kept the D10 lettering, and a good amount still kept the Canadian Pacific uh, Canadian Pacific on the tender.
Hmm.
But a few of them got that's Herald right here, and I edit this down again, I'll try to get a better photo of it. But I'm gonna slay this name. Land of Evangeline Route
Hmm.
is what that Herald's called, and
Wow. Never
just a
seen
few of
that.
them got that logo painted on their tender.
Wow. I like the little like marker lights attached there to the front of the boiler, and I see the flags for, like, there was like white or green. I remember as a little kid seeing those on freight trains where it'd be like white was like running
Mhm.
off schedule or green was extra. I forget what they meant, but it's weird to think now. It's like I can't imagine a Gevo with flags stuck in the front of it going by. But
You don't even see them with marker lights anymore.
no, yeah, all that is kind of different and gone. Yet it was always everywhere. But
But
no, yeah,
pointing that out, it's really weird with this photo, and there's probably some weird rule, but you never would see illuminated lanterns and flags together. They would
yeah.
kind of be one or the other.
Hmm.
So it's odd that you see that. So I'll have to look that up.
It's interesting too, the front headlight, how it's got the like number board thing that almost looks like it's over the very top. Maybe that illuminates that number board too, as well as being the headlight. That's kind
And
of an
that
interesting feature.
And that's what I want to see if Rapido pulls off, because I'm personally more of a fan of that middle headlight and that cool number board up top.
Hmm.
But the fact that they're producing an HO scale several variations of that headlight with the number board on top, and I'm really excited to see how crisp that looks.
Yeah. It is.
Cool.
It's a neat little steam locomotive. I mean, it would
Hmm.
for with a short tender and everything. As far as for like a 4x8 type railroad, this would be an awesome locomotive to have because it
Hmm.
looks like a big, because the boiler is fairly substantial. It doesn't look like a little 040. It looks like a
Hmm.
serious steam locomotive, but then it's got this little bitty tender and things. So yeah, it's kind of perfect for a model layout.
And this reminds me of Cagney locomotives, how they were used in parks because they're a 440, but that boiler compared to the driving wheels is completely oversized. And
It
this
does.
kind of reminds me of that a little bit. So it's super big boiler, which of course in real life is used for, a whole lot more power. But in a model, you can fit a whole bunch more electronics in the motor in there, and that allows you to do so much more. Montreal and Atlantic, I'll put a photo up on the screen when I edit it down. They were another subsidiary of Central Pacific, and they only had three D10s that were transferred to them because they were subsidiaries, so they could just ask for some D10s and they would send them over. They were all relettered, but they kept their CP numbers, and that's pretty much all I have on them.
Now, are all these different like subsidiary roads, are they in the release from Rapido? I know we're going to get to that, but there is more than just Canadian Pacific road names coming, or?
And that's something so there are more than Canadian Pacific road names coming. There's Credit Valley, which is one that's been preserved at a heritage railroad. There's a whole bunch of Canadian Pacific. There's one passenger variation, which is a later one because before they just kind of ran the black ones. But later on they painted them that red. Because how they did with some of their passenger locomotives where they had um, all like they had the number board in the middle of their side, except not everything in that paint scheme except for the number board. So we'll see that scheme when we come to it. But I don't know off the top of my head, but I saw maybe one more.
Hmm.
So Quebec Central, they bought and leased some. I don't know if they're a subsidiary or not. Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, CPR subsidiary. Yeah.
So I find it really weird that they would have like bought and leased them if they were a subsidiary when the others were just kind of given them.
And there was a lot of that kind of stuff in those days where, I mean, you had a lot of big roads, like how the New York Central had the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie. They would have roads that they basically controlled or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of times motive power was shared. Sometimes it was as if they were different roads. It's kind of all over the place how some of that stuff was done. And steam, at least what I kind of know of it, it seems like as steam would get older or they get newer models, it always seemed like poorer roads or smaller roads, just as today they'll take on used diesels, would suddenly take on like, oh, well, we'll take your old steam locomotives now that you got new better ones. So
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's some of these subsidiaries were kind of getting secondhand, power that became surplus.
And that's probably how they lived on so late into the 1960s too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then this is that oil-fired one I was talking about earlier, the Esquimalt and Nanaimo
Yeah.
Railway. Um, and they got 16 of those oil-fired ones, and I have no idea. I guess I could have looked at some photos, which I didn't think to do, but I have no idea why they ended up with 16 oil-fireds, where it seems like everywhere else it was just that extended coal bunker.
Hmm. I'm not sure. It says they were on Vancouver Island. Maybe the rest of their roster was oil fired or they'd converted over, so they wanted
That's
that.
true.
Yeah.
And then the last thing about these is that they kept the CP lettering and numbering, and they were one of the only roads that did that.
Oh, I like that color picture. Now that looks like the like early model that Rapido has shown, isn't it? With the headlight on
Mhm.
the end of the boiler.
Well, that's the thing about that. There's really only a few that Rapido is making that have that higher headlight. And
Hmm.
I looked at the photos and I was trying to find specifically which ones had the headlight up versus the headlight down. And I couldn't find any specific class or any specific, well, it would be the later ones would be the later classes. So I couldn't find any specific reason why they would be above or below. I'm sure there obviously is one, but I'm just not aware of it, you know?
I don't know. I know a lot of times that was like a railroad thing that like I know, like Denver and Salt Lake, when they were taken over by the Rio Grande, headlights moved up, or I think they moved down. Like on the Denver and Salt Lake, they mounted them high, Rio Grande put them down low. So
Hmm.
again, it kind of can just be a railroad thing, as more than a real need or a reason for it. That it's just their practice.
But
It is
that's
an
what
awesome looking. Is there a year on that? What I see, July
it
59.
is.
A nice color shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about that is you're talking about the road names. You see Canadian Pacific with both up and down in the same class. So it's just really odd that you see that.
Yeah.
Next photo. Here we go.
That's
So,
nice. Yeah, with
yeah.
the end of the boilers, kind of that lighter color.
And that's the other variation. So there's some with the lighter gray boiler, and then the other variation is just black, the same color as the boiler, or maybe a bit darker. I couldn't really tell,
Hmm.
but I not aware of the reason for the difference. Just the early samples on this look really good. I
Look
mean,
sharp, yeah.
mm-hmm,
Steam locomotives are so neat. I mean, diesels are awesome too, but
mm-hmm,
I think all the valve gear and like around the boiler there, the handrail along the top of the boiler and the piping, there's just something so intricate about steam locomotives compared to diesel. And of course, the working, getting to see them run, there's a lot more action to seeing the side rods going.
yeah,
Diesels are very cool, but a steam locomotive is kind of alive the way it's cranking along as it goes. Yeah.
absolutely. And the other thing I noticed about this, and I've never really understood it in the concept, is this is supposed to be a number board, but
Hmm.
I don't really in photos notice that so much.
I
So
mean,
we have it here, but
there, you know.
I didn't notice it before. Oh, so I guess that changes. That's another difference.
It's like an
Some of these
angle
would have this straight
different.
on number board, while some of these would have kind of
An
like a
angle. Yeah,
triangle.
yeah, you can see it from the side better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Can't believe I didn't notice that before. So, can we go over some of the differences real quick?
Oh, it looks like coal or oil tender, so they're gonna do both.
And then they have the raised or straight walkways. And that's another thing I was looking at classes. I can't tell the difference because they're mixed in classes.
Hmm.
Um, it was either class H or G that had both the straight and the up down walkways. So I don't really know the reason behind that. They had
Um,
the centered or smoke box top mounted headlights. So we covered that.
yeah.
They had the two styles of power reversers. And I remember that was shown on the CAD drawings. So this view isn't really great for it. Yeah. And I'm not exactly sure the different styles of power reversers. Are you?
No, I'm afraid I don't know on that. Yeah, I'd have to look at that.
Yeah, this
So
is a lot of very specific stuff. And then the straight or angled cylinder steam pipes. And that's another thing I'm not very sure of.
I think isn't that above the drivers by the walkway on that picture? See like the coiled.
Yeah, so
I think that's what those are there.
so I always wondered if it was this or this, but yeah, I'm thinking it was these
I think
coils over here. Somebody's going to be writing a long comment trying to correct us all over this.
Our last video, one of the things we talked about on those E units, I said that on the E9s, the only thing
hmm
I knew was dynamic brakes. And I either got a message or saw a message someplace where a person said chrome or stainless steel band around that upper headlight is another
Uh,
spotting feature of an E9. So, it's neat. That's one of the great things about doing some of these is like, oh, that's cool. I'll have to start watching for that. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Somebody, yeah, chimed in on that one for us.
I'm just happy that these videos get traction.
Oh, look at the lighting effects. I didn't realize they're going to have flickering firebox. That's cool.
Yeah, that's so rare. Our last thing is the two different bell locations.
Oh, yeah.
And I did figure out the difference between these. The earlier ones were kind of mounted between the steam dome and the sand dome. Uh, I guess that's just the original spot. And then towards the later versions, they had it on the check valve up front.
Oh, okay.
So that is the one I was able to find the difference.
Hmm.
And so, like you're saying, the flickering firebox, too few models in the US have that, but it seems like a standard in the UK.
Oh, is it? Wow. I know I have it at least on like some, I might have a Spectrum like 4A2 Mountain that has
Mm.
that. And it's a cool feature. It's a neat thing.
Bachmann does it now. They started with their streamlined K4, and I
Yeah.
believe they're doing it in their K4 rerun, but I'm not sure.
Hmm. And the
So,
marker lights are going to work. That's always cool because that's, I think, the little
mhm.
lantern like side lights. That's awesome.
But from a Steam guy in HO, one thing we always see with the marker lights that illuminate is they're very stubby so that you can get the wires in there, and they're very short and very out of scale. But these look really good. They look very thin and like sleek as opposed to a lot of
Yeah,
the
they
other
don't
stuff
look
that's out
bad.
there.
They look good. Yeah. And
hmm
again, that's a challenge to even with LED and that kind of stuff to work in that small a thing. But
Absolutely.
I'm glad they do it because both on cabooses and like steam locomotives, I think that's so awesome to have those lights work like that because it is a
hmm
fun feature.
Absolutely. Maybe they'll have little flags that pop up too. Who knows?
Knowing Rapido, they could put them in a bag in the model for us. That I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
They did that with the M420, didn't they?
I can't remember. Well, like the RDCs, it was neat to find all that interior stuff. And did I tell you I put the interior in that? I took that one apart. I
hmm
got the RPO interior stuff all put in it. I was thrilled, like cool. I put the lid back on it. I forgot I was going to put a little canopy glue to tap each one of them into their peg. I didn't do it.
Oh.
And then I like picked it up and turned it over, to put the couplers on, and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you hear that like Legos rattling sound.
Yeah.
Oh no! So I
Mm-hmm.
had to reopen it and put it all back in again. But
That's what I don't even know how it goes in. So I was trying. I even looked at photos. I should have reached out to you.
yeah, it took me a couple. I had to look at pictures, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's like 4 or 5 pieces of the mail sorting stuff that it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, okay, I think that fits there, and it's kind of those once you get it, it's like, yeah, okay, it all
Mm-hmm.
fits
Yeah.
together.
I
But
could
it's
do without this, maybe this.
yeah, like that one
Yeah.
can't go there, or that piece won't fit next to it now. So yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
took a little bit. Another
It's like
neat.
Tetris.
Yes, yeah.
The other thing about their steam engines that I want to talk about is the thing they had before, and I know there's some people on Facebook groups who've been skeptical about it, is the eccentric crank on the Royal Hudson had some problems, and the chuff sensor on the Royal Hudson had some problems. And for everybody out there, the reasons they went wrong, the chuff sensor, there's a magnet or some other kind of sensor on the flywheel, and that was held on by clips, and so that's to get the accurate 4 chuffs per revolution. And
Oh,
what ended up happening was in the shipping, they should have permanently attached it somehow, like with adhesive or whatever. And so the magnet actually came out of the clips, and that caused some problems in there. But now it's permanently attached. Now the eccentric crank's fixed, and this has a coreless motor too in it.
cool.
So very exciting. An 18-inch minimum radius for my fellow 4x6 friends out there.
There you go. Yeah, I like the backhead dealer detail on the boiler in the cab. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And it looks like it has a plug connection. I see what, like 8 posts there
Mm-hmm.
underneath the plate. So I assume that plugs into the tender, and the tender must collect electricity, or tender probably has sound in it, I would guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like with Rapido, you never know. They might end up putting little speakers in the cylinders.
Oh, I do like that Canadian Pacific with the Tuscan band on the tender and the cab. That's nice.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. So this is what I was talking about. A lot of you see this Canadian Pacific for all these short lines. Here you have that Dominion and Atlantic with the Land of Evangeline route. I said it right one time with that herald on it. And then you have the Quebec Central, and this is the Credit Valley one that's been preserved I was talking about.
And there you can see the 2 bell placements you were talking about. The one with the Tuscan tender has the
Hmm.
bell back between the domes, whereas the others have it behind the smoke jack.
Yep,
It is a neat little steam locomotive.
it is. It's very odd when you're trying to find out the history of it, but it's really, really cool.
Yeah, it looks like the tender's also going to be separate, and I see the different tops for probably oil is the one with the rail across it, and then the extended coal. Huh. I
Well,
didn't.
they're selling these separately as its own item. So every engine comes with its own tender that's appropriate for the prototype. But then this is for people who just I don't really know who this is exactly for, because they make the unlettered version with a tender. But just for people who want a tender, it comes with both
Yeah,
versions.
I see that a lot. I mean, that goes back to old days stuff too. I mean, like Mantua steam locomotives, they would
Hmm.
sell like long haul tenders, Vanderbilt tenders. So you could, again, I think that's a steam thing. The tenders got traded out a lot on
Uh,
locomotives, so it gives you that option of setting up however you want it. Yeah,
or maybe if it has the same connector that they used on their Royal Hudson, somebody could just use it for the same thing.
put that little tender on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So Canadian Pacific, there's a Canadian Pacific with an oil tender. We know it's an earlier version because of the bell. There's the flat walkway on the side. I don't know enough about it to identify the style of power reverser, but I'm sure somebody who that is like a big thing to would be able to recognize it from the concept art. And this is what I was talking about with the boiler, that instead of being lighter than the body was darker.
Yeah. there's kind of, it's like that graphite or whatever color, and again, they're just
Hmm.
different shades of kind of charcoal, black, gray, but they are distinctly different when done right, and it really stands out on a model. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next one. That extended cold tender is still an earlier version. And the last one we saw, that triangle looking number plate. This one has the straightforward one
Oh yeah.
and still with the low headlight.
And it says it had the high mounted walkway, and I guess that's that up
Yeah,
and
so
over
that
notch.
refers
Yeah.
to this thing that goes up. And I think this might be that power reverser. This thing right here.
Yeah, and I've been doing research on the Shea steam locomotives for another project,
Mm,
and there's one of the Shays has an up and over box like that with stuff, and I had just gotten told by somebody what that was, and now I'm
mm-hmm.
drawing a blank. So yeah, we got to do a little more research on that one, but that at least explains the low and high mounted walkways.
Yep. So again with that straight on number board at us, but this time with the flat walkway, still cold tender, and we're still looking at the earlier versions with the higher mounted bell.
What did you call the thing between the dome and the exhaust stack? See how that pipe that comes up? The ones have the bell next to that. What'd you call that piece?
So it's called a check valve, but I have no idea what it does
Hmm. Okay.
because the safety and everything, the safety valve and all that kind of plumbing's right up here. So
Okay.
I have no idea what the check valve would be.
Looks like these
Knows?
have vents in the roof too. I assume that's what those two.
Yeah.
They
I,
almost look like big antennas on a diesel, but
yeah.
yeah, they're like those pull back open for a vent. Yeah.
And knowing Rapido, they're gonna move.
Yes. That. Yeah. You see that on a lot of better steam locomotives that you can open
Hmm.
and shut those. So yeah, it's cool.
And here, I don't recall if the last one had it, but here we see that lighter boiler
Yeah.
shade.
And then the builder's plate right above that too. Is that
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we saw, what were there like five different? There's 500 of these, and well, maybe it was more than that. Different builders, so I assume those will be unique, where they'll say, Canadian locomotive or whatever.
Oh,
Who?
yeah. Okay, moving on. We have this one right up. Here we go. So again, with that darker boiler or darker front shade, I guess you'd call it.
Hmm.
And then we have the straight edits number board, the later version because it has the bell up front, and then the high walkway with that different kind of power reverser. And we're still talking with the cold tender.
I like the red. I think they called it Tuscan. The window frames that looks neat on the cab.
Hmm.
Makes that stand out.
And another thing I forgot to bring up earlier, the inside of the cab was this olive green color. So I wonder if Rapido is going to replicate that.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Again with the straight edits number board, lighter front part, and the late version because it has the bell, the high walkway, and the different kind of power reverser with a cold tender.
I guess they all have the same kind of pilot or cow catcher. That seems to be something that changes a lot on steam locomotives. But so far, I think I'm seeing kind of standard design across all of them, for the front around the coupler,
Hmm.
that tends to change a lot. But this looks like maybe those don't on this.
Well, another thing I wonder is because these were all built by and for Canadian Pacific. So I wonder if they, since they had control, they did it in their standard way. Because in the U.S., everything was different, and Norfolk Western had that curved front,
Hmm.
and Pennsylvania kind of had the curve too. And a lot of times you saw this slanted triangular thing.
Yeah.
Uh, so here we have that high headlight, and it was still late because we have the bell. No top number plate or number, yeah, illuminated number plate here. And where the headlight was, we just have the number plate down there. And what I was saying earlier, I can't zoom in because this website's kind of wonky like that. But you see that number plate right here
Yeah.
above the headlight.
Over the top of the headlight. Yeah.
Hmm.
I bet that'll be see through, so the
I
headlight
bet.
will illuminate it. Yeah, that'll look good.
Hmm. Here we go. And this is the version that I was really interested in because I just like I don't want to say aesthetic, but I like the look of this one. So there's the triangle number plate. The It's kind of like the ones we've been seeing, except this is the later version. So we have the different kind of power reverser with the high walkway and the bell on top of the check valve, cold tender, and the lighter front front color. I don't really know what that part's called.
I think I like the headlight on the center there on the boiler. I don't
Hmm.
know why, but yeah, I kind of like that look on them.
I grew up around I was talking earlier about the Canadian Pacific engines preserved in my area. All of them have that triangular number board in the front, and then they had the center mounted headlight, and I've just grown to enjoy that.
It's a good, yeah, it's a neat look for it.
I can't believe these are all different. There's a whole bunch of stuff that Rapido does to get these prototype specific. It's really amazing.
Hmm.
So then again, we have the flat number board, later version because it has the bell, high walkway, different power reverser, cold tender. Next one. Uh, so this is the second Canadian Pacific one that has that higher headlight, and then replaced with the headlight is the number board. No illuminated number board at the top of the boilerplate. And then it's the later version because it has the bell, the different kind of power reverser, and the high walkway.
Is there something different on its cab? Look at that pipe that kind of goes over the top of the windows and down the back side of the side of the cab. Is that on the others? Have I just not noticed that before?
Are you talking about this one?
Yeah, no, no, no. Back on the cab side, above the red windowsill. See, there's a
Hmm.
pipe over the window, and then it curves
Oh,
and.
look at that.
What is that? Is that on the other ones?
We'll have to see. Just go way back.
Oh, I guess it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just hadn't noticed it, and suddenly it hit me like, is that different?
that
Hmm.
must be a handrail then, because you see on this front photo, the handrail goes all the way around to the
Oh, and
front
it
of the
comes
cab.
around. Yeah, I guess it would be. Yeah. Huh.
Hmm. That must be quite an engineering challenge. So then here we are on the last Canadian Pacific version that we have, but it's the passenger version, the one passenger version they're producing. It has the different kind of power, or the original kind of power reverser with the low walkway, the flat number board on the front, and their imitation gold color, or I forget what it's called. It's kind of fake gold or something along those
I
lines.
think it's called Dulux Gold,
Uh,
Dulux. Maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it has so it's a 3 inch wide. I don't know why I know it's 3 inches wide, but I saw it somewhere. Stripe around the side, and then it has the crimson color to color in the number board and the letter board.
That's very nice looking. And it's got an oil tender. Yeah.
Yes, an oil
I,
tender.
I like that one a lot.
Absolutely. So then next we're going to go into these short lines. We have Dominion Atlantic with the high headlight with the high number board, the headlight in the center of the boiler replaced with the number board, and then no illuminated number board at the top of the boiler plate. We have the on the back of the tender the Land of Evangeline Route Herald, and then I'm not sure if it was renumbered, but I think it was.
Hmm.
So
And then it's got the extended coal thing for the tender.
yeah, cool. Moving down the list, Dominican Atlantic, same thing, but the dark front part, then the straight on illuminated number board on the boilerplate and the center mounted headlight. Just like the last one, it's the late version with the bell and then the high walkway with the later power reverser. So then here it is unlettered, and this is the version with the illuminated number board, the center mounted headlight, and then you get your choice of tender included with the coal or the extended coal bunker or the oil tender. And then the different unlettered variation you get is it is high headlight. I guess the concept art is off.
Yeah, I was gonna say it says highlight
Yeah.
on the thing, but it's not. But yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's just the same thing then with the high mounted headlight and the no illuminated number plate. So very cool.
These say they're unlettered, but on Steam, like this illustration,
Mm-hmm.
I assume this would be decal ready. So you're going to have the red frames on the windows, the different shades like on the front of the boilers, a lighter color. So
Mm-hmm.
this one literally would be ready if you had a home road or want to make it something else. You could letter the tender and the cab side and be good to go. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what this is the difference between the unlettered and then what he was the unpainted.
Oh, is there unpainted as well?
No, he was trying to phase out the unpainted ones because he's saying they just don't make profit off of them. So this is the difference between just the gray plastic, or I guess these are die cast,
I think
but
they're
then
diecast.
the painted body shell.
And are they doing all these both sound and non-sound? How is that? I don't think I've looked at that close enough.
Yeah, so they're
Well, they do have
DC
both.
silent and sound. I'd assume they're still DCC ready.
Oh yeah, I would have to think so on the others. And boy, Steam especially because all it does, buying it with sound, you'd really want the sound, I'd think.
Yeah. Especially with all the effort they go to make the sounds right. Their whistle on the Royal Hudson. Did you hear all the sound card they made?
No, I assume they actually got recordings of it and everything.
Well, it was very playable. Like every time you pressed it, it was kind of like a different recording, and you let
Oh,
it
that's
go, and
neat.
it would trickle off. You need to look it up. It was really
That,
cool.
yeah.
So I would hope they do the same thing here. So this is their Credit Valley, which is preserved. I'm not really sure where, but it's up north definitely. And you can only buy this through the Credit Valley Railway Company,
Hmm.
and it's just a nice little exclusive model they're making for them.
That's neat when companies do that. For
Hmm.
collectors, it's all. And I always find out after the fact, like, oh, I wish I'd have known that was done. Like, I didn't know there was this like special run just for this one place. So
Hmm.
that's cool to see that, and that they put it on their website because a lot of times companies don't. You don't see reference to it. It's like, well, how did I miss that? And it's like, oh,
Hmm.
because they didn't really talk about it. They made it for somebody else, and that company promoted it. So now there's two of these Credit Valley exclusives. What, this one and then another? So I guess, do they have two that operate or are on display up there?
No, so this is the only one. They just have another Canadian Pacific. Oh,
Oh,
wait a second.
see, it's
Maybe. Oh, it's the same road number. So this must be their heritage scheme, and then this is their before or while it was on Canadian
letters.
Pacific.
Yeah, okay. Huh.
Cool. Very cool still.
That is very awesome. That'd be a nice
Absolutely.
little locomotive. And they've shown pilot samples of it. That's the pictures we saw further up on the web page.
Yeah, there's plenty of die casted samples. The just like before on the Royal Hudson, the boiler and the chassis are die cast, so it'll be a good puller.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting. I can't wait to get my hands on one of these.
And I guess is it slated for what in the next year to come out? Is it
Yeah,
this
there's
year?
aiming for to be out by 2021 by the
Oh,
end.
all right. Wow.
So
Looks like the cab windows are all flush fit. That's nice. You can
very
squeeze.
cool. And glazing on them looks really good. Sometimes it's very phony you see on these models, not Rapido, but sometimes just the glass is very either too see-through or either too glazed. But this looks very, very cool because it's not super see-through. It's just a little murky.
And fits. Yeah, I like it when they fit up against like because the molding on the cab has got the gasket for the window, and
Hmm.
old style was to put the clear plastic behind it. So in
Yeah.
reality, that would be a big ledge there, whereas that gasket or seal around
Hmm.
the window would be right there. And it's nice now that they can shoot the window pieces in with enough precision to get them to fit, because that's such a slick look when it's done that way.
And even on that, Rapido does a whole bunch of window gaskets, so I wouldn't be surprised if they put the physical gaskets on here too.
Oh, no, too, yeah.
Yeah. Very impressive, all of it.
That's a neat model. No, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. There we go. And you can look that up if you go to rapidotrains.com and
RapidoTrains.com.
look under HO for the Canadian Pacific D10 class. And you can look at all the stuff we were looking at today. But it's an interesting model. I mean, Rapido's done some neat stuff.
Hmm. It's interesting they chose this one because the history is very odd to track it. Because I've
Mhm.
been looking for the past few days and it's just hard to find certain variations and how they divided them up. It's not really by class. It's just, I don't want to say random numbers, but it kind of is. So it's very interesting.
And those letters afterwards, seems like I can remember that on some of their early diesels in doing research, where they'd have the A, B, C, D, and
Hmm.
it can mean nothing more than this was the first order of them, this was the second order of them, and they're the same. It might be the
Yeah,
same F unit or C liner or whatever, but they had that. So no, that's a neat thing. But no,
absolutely.
awesome look at the D10. So yet another fun
Absolutely.
model coming. So. Well, I appreciate getting to be on tonight with this, Drew. And when the model comes out, I'm sure that we'll have one to look at. So
Thank you.
awesome, awesome.
Sounds good to me.
Do we have, or do you have, do we get to do
Oh,
a goodbye or anything?
I haven't done that in so long. So what is it? What is it? You do this and then it's not the middle finger?
It's thumbs up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there
Thumbs
we
up.
go.
Yeah, there we go.
1, 2, 3. It's not the middle finger.